How's it going? And welcome to another episode of Foolish Fantasy. I'm your host, Kramer Sansone, here with your fantasy football coverage across Foolish Club Media. Welcome into week 6. Week 6, here we are. Here we go. Tonight, we're going to see a divisional matchup between the Giants and also the Eagles. We'll get to that Thursday night football action there, as I see my cat just jumped out from the background for me. Thank you all for tuning in. I do truly appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please like this video. Make sure you do subscribe. Turn on notifications as well, whether if you are listening to us on a podcast platform or any of the podcast platforms you get your content over on the Foolish Club Media on, and also over on YouTube. If you're over on YouTube, make sure you turn those notification bell on. You like watching us live. Especially this is a good live show to have because I always put up pictures on there, so you don't always see this ugly mug of a face on the screen. But you know what? We do appreciate you all tuning in and joining in. Question for the crowd. Draft strategy. When you were drafting your team or if you were acquiring players on your team set of right now, I do apologize if you can hear mowing going on in the background. I guess my apartment complex wants to mow right now. But the draft strategy, do you draft your quarterback and then you pick up a guy that's on his team, whether if it's a running back or whether if it is a wide receiver or a tight end? Because in a league that I have right now, I got Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman. I also went out and got Trevor Lawrence and Brenton Strange. Well, now Brenton Strange is done. So because it's a two-flex type of quarterback option where the overflex is. But I'm curious, do you like to double up on points that way? Because I do. I like to think that's what happens. That's why, like last year, I got Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and it worked out perfectly because of how it went out last year. This year, not so much because Mr. Joe Burrow is a donezo for at least another couple more months. But yeah, no, thank you all for tuning in. That's the question, and I would like to find out if that's what you do or how you do in the comment section, whether if you are listening to us on Spotify, which, by the way, on Spotify now there's a new feature where you can comment on the actual podcast that's been posted out there, and I scour those comments, and I look in there, and I'll interact with you on that as well. And also, any fantasy football questions, feel free to slide in the DMs. I will try to answer as much as possible through my knowledge of fantasy football. So let's get to the foolish funsies that we do every single show. And it's going to be an interesting one because, Joe Flacco is the new quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals. Congratulations, Joe. Mr. Sleepy Joe Flacco. I was shocked. I was shocked just because we saw the performance just past Sunday of the Lions and Bengals game, which was absolutely dreadful. It was ugly, to say the least. Jake Browning had -2 fantasy football points entering the fourth quarter. Did finish with an over 20 PPR style league. Not good, though. It's not what you want because he was throwing terrible balls to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and crew on that team. They needed to do something, and this is a very good, Bengals are still trying to win right now, and they want to get the best type of caliber quarterback out that they were not getting that with Jake Browning whatsoever this season. So they went out there. They get Joe Flacco, I think, for a 5th, and I do believe they're getting a Joe and a 6th in return. I think the 6th round draft pick was from the Detroit Lions for them. So they get Joe Flacco, and I like the mindset that this the ownership did and the GM for the Bengals of saying, hey, what we've seen for the past 3-4 weeks with Jake Browning is not going to cut it for this team. They're still in very good contention of possibly tying or winning the North of the AFC, and you weren't going to do that with Jake Browning. Now, are you going to do it with Joe Flacco? That's still a different question there because Joe Flacco has not looked great whatsoever after week 1. I think he had almost a 300-yard performance in that week 1 victory that Joe Flacco had with the Browns, but that's been the only victory the Browns have had. So I don't know exactly what Joe Flacco we're going to get. I don't know if we're going to be getting the, Joe Flacco from 2 years ago when he won Comeback Player of the Year with I think, wasn't it the Browns that he won Comeback Player of the Colts? One of the teams that he won Comeback Player of the Year with. We're not getting this Joe Flacco right now. We're getting a hopeful, just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. I think Jamar Chase needs to be running an out route, an in route, go 5 yards, come back, do a curl route, do a slant, be as close as possible to Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco just needs to get the ball into his hands. That's exactly what you need to do with Jamar Chase. You need to do that with T. Higgins. You need to do it with Chase Brown. Yeah, at least get those guys going because we've drafted Chase Brown, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase super high. Super high. Whether if it's first round, second round, or third round between those 3 guys, we're not getting any production from them. They are like the 20th ranked running back in Chase Brown. Jamar Chase is at least a top 20 wide receiver from what we saw his performance last week because he single-handedly brought the Bengals back into that game. And then, of course, more turnovers happened to where they could not to capitalize. And T. Higgins has been a top 50 wide receiver in fantasy football standards. Not exactly what you wanted from a guy that you drafted in the second round. We expected a lot from this team, and now we could probably think that, hey, we might be getting some more out of this team, fantasy standards, because of Joe Flacco, but I just don't see it. I truly don't. But Joe Flacco is the new quarterback in Cincinnati, so there's a new sheriff in town in Cincy. The Texans general manager did speak this week, and he said there's no timetable on Joe Mixon's return. We saw I want to apologize. So we saw a bad start. If you start Woody Marks last week, a lot of people did. I think he was started in over 58% of leagues. He did not. I think he got like a 2.3 PPR for fantasy. Not great. And they're going to still be splitting carries between Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. I don't think Woody Marks is a valuable starter right now. Nick Chubb, I think, is the guy that you obviously want to start each and every single week if you are running with Texans running backs, especially if you have Joe Mixon on your team. You wanted to handcuff him. Hopefully he comes back at some point time soon. But it sounds like this 1,000-yard rushing running back, like we saw. There's a big reason why Joe Mixon was very prominent for the Texans last year in winning football games, and we're not seeing that right now with the Texans. This offense doesn't seem to be gelled with what they're doing at running back. I know it's Nick Chubb's first year, and they're the back there, and also same with the rookie Woody Marks. But you need to get more better play out of C.J. Stroud and also Nico Collins. Those are the only two valuable guys that I would say are fantasy options, but then there's also Nick Chubb. I do think Nick Chubb's A-okay. We are going into a bye week between the Houston Texans, so I'm curious to see if Joe Mixon will be able to return the following week in Week 7. I just want to find out, but the Texans general manager said there's no timetable on the Mixon return. And Mixon was a guy that teams drafted he's like 50th overall draft pick, 55th overall draft pick in that 50-60 range when people were drafting their team. You expected to see Joe Mixon back by Week 6, but he's not, and that's it's a super unfortunate. We'll get into more of the injuries to say the note later on in the funsies. A.J. Brown, let's have a discussion real quick. Is A.J. Brown a reliable starter for fantasy purposes? I'm saying no. As of right now, I would say if in a bigger lineup league, I would clearly start A.J. Brown if you're in a 12-team league as your flex option. But I'm not putting him as my wide receiver 1 right now. I'm not putting him as my wide receiver 2 right now. And he seems like a valuable flex option. He's still getting his targets. That's something that I've been pounding on and prompting this entire time throughout Foolish Fantasy is targets. Always look at the target share. He's been getting 8 targets each and every single week. It's just what he's doing with the targets is absolutely nothing. He's not getting separation whatsoever from the people that are guarding him. And if he does, he's getting at least 1 to 2 yards after it. We're not getting a yak from him. The yak's coming all the way from Devonta Smith. A.J. Brown he's a very good sell low candidate if you're trying to go out there and like, hey, maybe I can guess. Maybe it's a gamble. It is a gamble right now if you want to start A.J. Brown. Who knows this week against the Giants tonight that he could literally go absolutely off because of the secondary is not great for the Giants. And he's also in a favorable matchup. So, I mean, he is a wide receiver 2 or flex option for this week alone. But if he's going against teams that have better defenses, he's a flex option. He's not going to be a difference maker for your team. He may get you 7, 8 points. But those aren't the points that you wanted to draft him by. You expected him to get 12 to 15 fantasy points each and every single week. He's only coming in with 2, 4, 8. It's nothing to be like, oh, this is the best wide receiver out there for the Eagles. No, the best wide receiver right now for the Eagles is Devonta Smith. And then you probably have to go back on Saquon Barkley, and you go on Dallas Goedert. Then Jalen Hurts is clearly the best fantasy option at quarterback. But no, I would say A.J. Brown is not a reliable starter for fantasy purposes. And if you have him, I'm sorry, but I would try to work yourself a trade. There's nothing wrong with a week 6 trade. I've been doing trades on plenty of my fantasy teams for the last 3 to 4 weeks. It's a week by week basis. You're trying to get the playoffs, right? You're not making the playoffs right now if you're trying to start A.J. Brown. Go out. There's probably some other wide receiver, whether it's on waiver wire or whether it's out there that you can swindle your friends in trading, that you could probably package a deal up and send A.J. Brown out because he's just not the starter that you would want him to have. It's not looking good for him anyways because there's clearly a frustration. There's a fracture in that locker room right now in Philadelphia. I don't know if it's a Super Bowl hangover that they got going on right now, but it just doesn't seem like nobody is liking each other and everyone's arguing, bickering. I don't know if it's because it's the Philadelphia mindset over in the brotherly love. It's supposed to be lovely. It ain't lovely right now in Philadelphia, as A.J. Brown is not a reliable starter for fantasy purposes. We continue around the foolish funsies. If Brock Purdy's out, is Mac Jones a must start? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Mac Jones is putting in the work. He's 3-0 for a reason. He helped out he helped out the 49ers last Thursday night football to get and beat the Los Angeles Rams. I get it. The defense stepped up in the end in overtime, even though I'm pretty sure Sean McVay probably should have went for that field goal to tie it and hopefully get the ball back once more. That just didn't happen. Mac Jones is a must start because of the system that he is placed in with Kyle Shanahan. It seems like Mac Jones is back to his old self, like when he was in Alabama, being cool, calm, and collective. He knows he knows that everyone's going to be in the right spot at the right time. He just has to execute on his throw, and he's been executing on his throw perfectly, dropping it into the baskets. Even with Kendrick Bourne last week, a guy that he was very familiar with over in New England, that was his favorite target last week. I'm not saying go out there and get Bourne and start him this week. Don't do that. But if Mac Jones is out there and Brock Purdy can't get the job done or be healthy to start, you probably should just start Mac Jones. If you have Brock Purdy, make sure you have Mac Jones on your bench just in case, because he's just it's a good option to have. He's averaging about 20 to 18 fantasy points per week if he's starting. So that's exactly what you want coming out of your quarterback realm. 20 points is clearly the must. He's surpassed that twice in his 3-0 record right now, starting for the Giants. And he's already thought to himself, like, I'm the backup here. I'm making sure that Brock Purdy is going to have the best case scenario to win and also to help make this team make the playoffs. And if that means Mac Jones is coming off the bench and starting games for them to just win the game right then and there, he's going to get the job done. Mac Jones will get the job done because of that system he's in Kyle Shanahan. Like, it's a system quarterback league. I think, honestly, why wouldn't you not? They put a bad notion on the term system quarterback all the time. But if it works and they win games, so be it. They're winning football games. That's all it should matter, and that's exactly what the 49ers have done with Mac Jones starting. This is just ugly. It's not good. It's unfortunate for the Chargers, but another running back placed on the IR. Next 4 weeks, he will be out of it. Omarion Hampton has been placed on the IR with an ankle injury. Everyone was clamoring, wanting him to be number one back anyways in Los Angeles. That's going to have to be put on hold for a minute. Hassan Haskins will probably get the realm. Vidal also as well will get some more run out there. But an ankle injury will sideline Omarion Hampton for at least a handful of weeks. Put him on the IR. Hopefully you got somebody. Hopefully you got a backup on him. Maybe Hassan Haskins. He's still out there. He's still available in some fantasy leagues. I know we're past the waiver wire being done, but there's still a lot of percentages of teams and leagues that do not or have not rostered Hassan Haskins. You might want to probably tempt yourself in there because he will be the number one running back this week. Playing against, I think it's the Miami Dolphins, right? They play Miami. They play Miami this week. I believe they're playing Miami this week. They are. And they just gave up a crap ton of fantasy points to Rico Dowdle last week at the Carolina Panthers. So Marion Hampton's going to be on the IR. What's in the air in California and Los Angeles? Not even Los Angeles. What's in the air in the Chargers locker room? Why does everybody get hurt every single year and they can't stay healthy? I mean, it's a positive note for Denver Broncos or the Chiefs or even the Raiders to hopefully gain some ground on them. But they're not going to be. They're going to be without their number one and their number two running backs for at least 4 weeks, and then after Marion Hampton comes back, they'll be out with the number one running back for the remainder of the season. So it absolutely sucks. Another guy's going to be hurt and out. Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson tore his ACL and will be out the rest of the season. He tore that on Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. He was going to get a lot more run, especially with the rah-rah fumble issues. Ramondre Stevenson has been fumbling the ball like crazy. And even though that Mike Vrabel still wants Ramondre Stevenson out there, we were going to get more love and play from Antonio Gibson. Apparently, he's going to get more run. We're not seeing that. So now here we go. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be thrusted into that that running back 2 spot for this team. And I would not be shocked if somehow in some way he surpasses Ramondre Stevenson, at least by the next handful of weeks, because I'm not banking on a fumble. I'm expecting a fumble to happen between Ramondre Stevenson. It's going to be crucial. Be like, all right, we can't have you out there right now, especially if you're making these crucial plays and we're trying to win football games here. You don't win football games if you put the egg on the ground, because it's just not going to work out that way. It's just not how football works. And it is what it is. So, no, those guys are going to be out. Antonio Gibson out for the remainder of the season with a torn ACL. Let's get to the deploy and stash, because week 6 is going to be here super quick as this thing gets released out on Thursday, which we have Thursday Night Football tonight. So let's go with that first Thursday Night Football game, the Giants and the Eagles. I'm deploying Theo Johnson this week. Theo Johnson is an absolute red zone target for Jackson Dart. And with, I believe, Darius Slayton's going to be out, so there's another pass catcher that's not going to be out on the field. That means more run for Theo Johnson. And if they get all the way down the red zone, I'm either expecting a Cam Scadaboo handoff or a Theo Johnson touchdown pass from Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart absolutely loves Theo Johnson. I am going to also deploy Dallas Goedert if I have him on my team, because the tight ends, they get super open if it's the Giants on defense. They get open, and even that secondary just gets open. So Dallas Goedert's who I'm going to start tonight for the Eagles. I'm stashing Tyrone Tracy Jr. There's a chance that he may play. I just don't want to start him yet, because coming off that shoulder injury, I just don't want him back out on the field just yet. I'm okay with Cam Scadaboo starting for your fantasy teams, but Tyrone Tracy should not be starting for your teams. And also, he actually could miss tonight's game. I'm curious to see when the injury report will come out before. But Saquon Barkley, I might stash him this week. I don't know what you're going to get out of him, because he's dealing with the lingering knee issue that he sustained in the game last week against the Broncos. And he was on the did not practice list on Monday. It was a short week. I don't know if it might just be for out of precaution. But right now, I'm not starting Saquon Barkley for tonight. And I know I'll probably get some flack on that, but oh well. Let's go on to the Sunday's game, the noon slate. We'll kick it off with the Broncos and the Jets. I'm deploying Troy Franklin. The Jets secondary is just Sauce Gardner, and then there's just a handful of guys around. Sauce will probably be shadowing Cortland Sutton the entire time, which should give a lot of leeway and openness to Troy Franklin. And also, Bo Nix loves throwing it to one of his better friends out there, and Troy Franklin. I'm also going to deploy, if I'm at the Jets, Breece Hall. Denver Broncos defense is very, very stingy, but I think with like dump off passes and handoffs, like Breece Hall is going to find him some running room, because he's one of the better running backs that can find holes and get north and get vertical and get you some good fantasy points. And he might find the end zone at some point. I am stashing Cortland Sutton just because of the Sauce Gardner reason. I just mentioned that. That's why I'm going to start Troy Franklin. And I'm saying Justin Fields this week. He's the king of garbage time, but he's playing against one of the better secondaries in the team, in the league. And maybe you want to start him just for the running aspect, that he's going to run out of the pocket, get first downs, pick it up that way. He might have 10 rushes for 100 yards for a touchdown. I might be annoyed with myself for not starting Justin Fields, but I'm staying away from starting Justin Fields. There's a lot more better quarterbacks this week in 12 teams or 10 teams, even 15 teams or 16 teams leagues, that you can start a better quarterback rather than it is Justin Fields. And the Browns and Steelers, I'm going to deploy Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel had a great week over in London to kick off for his fantasy football starting standards. I did start him in a league. I did. I will admit, got me 18 points. And he could do the exact same thing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can see a lot of passes to David Njoku. I can see a lot of short passes to Harold Fanning, even also Jerry Jeudy. That could possibly happen. I'm also going to deploy Jaylen Warren, who's going to be absolutely healthy and fully back. That's the only guy I like that I would deploy for this matchup, because the Browns defense is absolutely legit. I will stash Harold Fanning. I know I just mentioned his name there, but even like how we saw last week, Njoku was Dylan Gabriel's favorite target. Fanning did have 3 targets on 1 reception. He did have a touchdown and like 13 yards. So, I mean, he might be a red zone threat, but it's just not enough to start him this week. Even I'm stashing DK Metcalf. I know it sounds weird saying it, but he really hasn't looked great this year with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football. He's a great red zone target and red zone threat, but I'm staying away from playing DK Metcalf. Let's go to the Chargers and Dolphins. Hassan Haskins is a must-add right now. If we're doing waiver wire watcher right now, Hassan Haskins, you need to pick him up on your team. He will be playing. We saw Rico Dowdle did last week against this Dolphins run defense. There's no run defense, actually. So Hassan Haskins should have himself a day. I would also start Jalen Waddle. I know the Chargers do have a decent secondary, but Jalen Waddle's the only wide receiver on this team that is worth having on your roster anyways. I thought Malik Washington would have had at least some sort of a step up last week. No, that just didn't happen. And also, Tua throwing the football, there's only one target he's going to have to throw to. And if it's not Darren Waller, it's going to be Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Waddle, I would deploy this week. I am stashing Quentin Johnston. He kind of fell back to earth last week. Now I expect to see a lot more Ladd McConkey. I expect to continue to see Keenan Allen get his love in the pass-catching realm of the Chargers. I'm also going to sit this week Darren Waller. He might be on my waiver wire watcher, which we will do later on, which he is. I would just hold him. grab onto him and hold on to him because he's not going to do what he did the last 2 weeks, but he's at least going to be somewhat of a decent, valuable option later on if you have a tight end that's not going to be starting because of people on buys. Like this week, there's 2 teams on buys in the Houston Texans and the Minnesota Vikings. Dalton Schultz, Mr. 5 receptions each and every single week is a bet that you should clearly obviously make. And TJ Hawkinson really hasn't looked like himself at all. So if you're out there and you need to replace your TJ Hawkinson for this week or your Dalton Schultz, if you start Dalton Schultz, which why wouldn't you want to bring in Dalton Schultz? He's actually a very reliable option for CJ Stroud. But for Darren Waller this week, I get it if you are trying to replace a TJ Hawkinson. But other than that, you shouldn't be starting Darren Waller this week. That's why I'm stashing him. And also, the Dolphins have given up so many points to running backs. Did I mention that already? They're just it's Hassan Haskins. Pick him up. Patriots and Saints. Saints, against this Patriots defense, I don't know if there's anybody that I would want to deploy. Chris Olave, maybe, but the defense is going to probably swallow him up. Maybe Alvin Kamara, but the exact same thing can be made an argument right there. Spencer Rattler, no, I would not deploy. I would stash every single Saints player that you have unless you truly have to play Chris Olave. But I'm deploying Ramondre Stevenson. I know I mentioned the fact of the fumble issue, but he's going to get the run. Ramondre Stevenson is the running back 1 in the system, and Mike Vrabel loves him. He does. And I don't know if Trayvon Henderson is not going to get some ground under his feet until like week 10, week 11, week 12. But you at least know there's a 2 running back method. If I'm going to lean on one of the running backs this entire time, it's Ramondre Stevenson. And it's to him to a T. Start him, start Stephon Diggs, start Drake May. Drake May is one of the better quarterbacks in fantasy football standards. But yeah, start rah-rah. Stash Travion Henderson. Rams and Ravens. I would start Matthew Stafford. Start him. If you need a quarterback to start Matthew Stafford this week. And Zay Flowers is the only valuable option for the Ravens. Only valuable option. Now, if Lamar Jackson's playing, maybe Lamar Jackson. But if Cooper Rush is throwing the football, it's going to be to Zay Flowers. Hopefully Zay Flowers can do something with it. I don't trust anybody on this Ravens offense if it's not Lamar Jackson. Like, that's why I'm stashing Derrick Henry. There's nobody I'm stashing for the Rams. Rams can just go out there and just go scorched earth on the Ravens like we saw with the Ravens gave up, 40 points super easily last week. Derrick Henry hasn't been Derrick Henry that we've seen. He's not taking over games. He's getting older. The tread on his tires are literally gone. And Derrick Henry is not a running back that you would want on your fantasy teams right now. So if you can trade him, try to trade him. Try to fleece your friends. Try to fleece your friends on trading Derrick Henry. Cardinals and Colts, Michael Carter is the running back 1, is the feature back for the Cardinals. I think they figured it out last week. They were throwing around Bam Knight. They were doing DeMarcado, and DeMarcado probably won't find himself on the field whatsoever after dropping that ball before he even got into the end zone, which don't do that. Always hold on to the pill. Josh Downs, the Colts, I wouldn't start him this week. Deploy Josh Downs. There's going to be a lot of shading on Michael Pittman Jr. and also with Tyler Warren. That's going to leave Josh Downs wide open for random slants or even verts to get him in some play. I'm stashing Kyler Murray this week. He might play, but his foot injury apparently is it's day by day or week by week, however they wanted to word it. I would not play Kyler Murray this week. If you have him, I would stash him. And right now in the Colts, play every single person that you have that have been making a difference on your fantasy teams. Like Jonathan Taylor's a tremendous stud. Daniel Jones, stud. Michael Pittman Jr., stud. Tyler Warren, stud. If you have those guys, start them. There's nobody you should be concerned about, especially against that defense of the Arizona Cardinals. Seahawks and Jaguars. Cooper Kupp. I think we're going to see a lot more Cooper Kupp. We got his second game this season with 9 targets, and I think we're going to get more. I hope we get more. And if it's a back-and-forth affair that we saw the Seahawks have against the Buccaneers last week, I'm A-okay with starting Cooper Kupp. He's going to probably get you 10 PPR points, which that's A-okay for a flex option. You would like more out of it? Maybe you get more out of that. Maybe you get him in the end zone this week. I'm curious to see what will happen. I'm also deploying Travis Hunter. This is the game Travis Hunter finally gets his first touchdown. That defense and secondary for the Seahawks looks bad. And I think Travis Hunter showed a lot against the Chiefs game. I was kind of hoping he got a touchdown during the Chiefs game. It just didn't happen. But I am starting Travis Hunter. Stashing this week on this Seahawks and Jaguars game, I'm not stashing anybody. This is where there's 2 games this week that I think we're going to see the most points being scored. The Seahawks and Jaguars are literally one of them. One of the games that I think, yes, you need to play every single person you can. Let's go to the Cowboys and Panthers. We're deploying and stashing, continuing to deploy and stash here. Javonte Williams, got to deploy him. You have to. He's number 3 running back in fantasy football standards, so you might as well start Javonte Williams. Xavier Legette is the guy that I would have full-blown coverage on. I'm trying to get a wide receiver to get onto your team. He had 1 touchdown last week on 3 targets, and it's against the Cowboys secondary, which is absolutely bad. The secondary, this is going to be a back-and-forth affair. Not as much points as you think, but Xavier Legette has the option to turn the tide and be the number 2 wide receiver behind Tetairoa McMillan for this Carolina Panthers team. And, I mean, I'm a big fan of Xavier Legette, and I think he's a valuable option to deploy this week. I'm stashing nobody from when it comes to the Cowboys standards. I like George Pickens this week. I do like Jake Ferguson this week. But I'm stashing Chuba Hubbard. He might play, he may not play. But if there's a running back that I would rather start between Chuba Hubbard or Rico Dowdle right now, I am going to be starting Chuba Hubbard. So that's just what I'm leaning towards for that game. Now let's go to the 3 o'clock stuff where it's the kicking it off with the Titans and the Raiders. I'm deploying Calvin Ridley. He showed last week why that you had to keep a hold of him. I know he's like a top 30 pick in most PPR leagues. You had him on his bench because you needed to have him on his bench until you finally saw that, hey, Calvin Ridley went out there and did something. Well, Calvin Ridley did something. And they're going to play against one of the worst defenses in the NFL right now in the Las Vegas Raiders. Calvin Ridley is a must-start this week. A must-start this week as well is Michael Mayer. We don't know if Brock Bowers is going to play all. The PCL issue on his knee could be very, very, very more serious than we expect. Or, I don't know, Big Albert O, the Mizzou guy, M-I-Z, he played last week. I was actually kind of shocked to see him play last week. He did get a lot of targets. Michael Mayer's going to take those targets away from Albert O. So Michael Mayer might be deploy him this week, actually. Just deploy him. I would stash Alec Manor because I think Calvin Ridley's going to get so much attention. So I'd stash him and stash Geno Smith. You should not be starting Geno Smith in any of your fantasy leagues. He had a great couple of weeks where he was flirting with almost 30 PPR points, but that Geno's gone. He leads the league in throwing interceptions. I can't believe he's still starting. He's still going to be starting this week, and it's a big head scratch to me. Just saying. So the 49ers and Buccaneers, points. What do we like in fantasy football? Points. We're going to get it with this game between the 49ers and Buccaneers. Kendrick Bourne, I'd deploy him. Alec Pierce might play. Juwan Jennings might play. I don't care. Kendrick Bourne has shown a lot with this team, especially from last week, and I expect him to be orchestrated or matriculated in this offense even more from Kyle Shanahan because I think Kyle Shanahan likes him. He's already had some run anyways when Juwan Jennings and Alec Pearsall was out there. Was Alec Pearsall? Is that the other guy? No, you know who I'm talking about. So Kendrick Bourne's a start. Ibuka, start him. Ibuka burned me this past week. I went up against Ibuka. Him getting those touchdowns, 164 yards, truly not helping, especially in a league where if you go over 100 yards and also 150, you get an extra bonus. Not fun. Not fun for me at all last week. I ended up losing that week. And also stashing. You shouldn't stash anybody this week when it comes to 49ers and Buccaneers. Let's go to Bengals and Packers before we go to the Sunday night game. I would deploy T. Higgins this week. I think Joe Flacco hits him. Joe Flacco starting, by the way. Joe Flacco will start against the Packers. I would start T. Higgins, and I'm also going to start Tucker Kraft because the Bengals cannot guard tight ends for any team that they go up against. We saw what Sam Laporta did last week. I expect that to happen once more with Tucker Kraft. I'm stashing Chase Brown. He's not giving me anything to prove that I want to start him. Like, he might be your flex option. Cool. That's actually not bad, but I'm not having him start as my running back 1. Romeo Doubs, I would sit as well, but also Christian Watson's been practicing, so Christian Watson might be getting some ramp up at some point in time. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. The Detroit Lions versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Start Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta should do fine against this linebacker crew of the Chiefs because there's so many options that defense has to cover. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to get majority of the love of the double coverage. Then Jameson Williams going to get something. And then we're going to have Sam Laporta probably be single covered as well. Maybe Drew Tranquil or even Jack Cochran is going to shadow him, or even Leo Chenal, which Leo Chenal probably will be shadowing Sam Laporta. So we saw what he did against Mark Andrews. Heck, ripped an interception away from Lamar Jackson that way. But I would start Sam Laporta. I would also start Tyquan Thornton. He seems like the red zone favorite or deep red zone favorite for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes clearly loves throwing to him because he's always open. He finds a way to get open. Start Tyquan Thornton. I'm stashing Jameson Williams because the defense for the Chiefs is very stingy. And I'm also stashing Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was non-existent last week. And he was non-existent last week for the Bengals. Well, it's because also quarterback play, Mike Gesicki. Lions defense is good. They're banged up, but they're still good. They're still good. Tron Arnold may not play, but they're still good. That's why I would not start Travis Kelce this week. He might get a touchdown, but you're going to get maybe 1 or 2 receptions from him in a touchdown, and that's probably basically it. Let's go to Monday Night Football before we get to our waiver wire watcher. Bills, Falcons, start Josh Allen, deploy him, and deploy Drake London. Drake London's in a very favorable matchup. You saw what Stephon Diggs did to the Bills defense last week with 150 plus receiving yards. Drake London could do the exact same thing. It'd be surprising to say the least. I'm also going to stash this week Keon Coleman. I would also stash Khalil Shakir because there's a no-fly zone for the Falcons. Big no-fly zone for the Falcons. They're not giving up wide receiver yards whatsoever. They might give up 100 yards here, but that's it for somebody. That's it. That's literally it. 200 passing yards is what they usually give up per week. So, and I'm going to deploy. I'm not deploying. I'm stashing Kyle Pitts Sr. because Kyle Pitts Sr. He might have had a better season this year, but the Bills defense, the linebackers are going to be able to stop majority of tight ends in this game. And let's go to the second Monday night game. That's the Bears and the Commies, the Commanders. I'm deploying DJ Moore. I think it's the DJ Moore breakout game against the Commanders. There's going to be a lot of shadowing around Rome Odunze. I'm also going to deploy Bill Korski-Merritt. He showed why he's good. He's a stud. He's such a stud. I expect him to have a big game against this Bears defense. I will stash Colston Loveland. He may or may not play this week, but at some point, I'm going to start saying deploy Colston Loveland because even the game that he got hurt in a week ago or 2 weeks ago, he had 3 targets on 3 plays. He's going to get targeted a lot whenever he's on the field. I think it's bound to happen. And that's how I'm doing it. It's also Zach Ertz. I don't know what's up with him, but I don't know if I would want to deploy him this week. I would stash him. Stash Zach Ertz. I don't know if the tight end play is going to be the big move this week at all for the Commies or even for the Bears. So I would just stay away from that. So those are my deploys and stashes for week 6. Let's get to the waiver wire watcher because I know we didn't have a show that got released out on Tuesday. So here's what some of my waiver wire watchers for the guys who are still out there and available in leagues. Darren Waller, I'd put a flag on him if he's not owned yet in leagues. 65% ownership. He did haul in 5 receptions, 78 yards on a touchdown last week, and that was basically it. After the second half, he was non-existent. But he's owned in 65% of leagues, so he's a guy that you might want to add. Theo Johnson's a must-add of a grab and stash, or you might even have him as a flex this week. He's going to get the love, especially tonight. They're down hands. He's a great red zone target for Jackson Dart, and he's owned in 12.7% of the leagues right now as this day of this recording. Mason Taylor is also another tight end I would put a flag on and watch. 23.9% of fantasy leagues he is ownership, and he's getting targeted out of the wazoo at this point. At the beginning of the year, whether if it was on Beach season or if it was on the first episode of Foolish Fantasy, I mentioned that Mason Taylor is going to be Justin Fields' favorite target at some point in time. And I think we're getting to that point right now in week 6. Because last week, 12 targets. The week prior before that had 9. He did haul in 9 of his 12 targets from this past week. Did secure 67 of those yards. He's due for a touchdown, and I think he might be a must start this week. Even though it's the Broncos, and the Broncos do have a great defense, I think Mason Taylor's gonna have some good plays coming out of that. Christian Kirk in the wide receiver realm is someone that you should probably keep an eye on. 27.9% of the leagues that he is available, and about 83% or however 67, 73, whatever the number is, he's only owned in 27.9% of the leagues. And Josh Downs, who's only owned in 42.5% of the leagues, are the 2 wide receivers I would keep an eye out on. And you could probably win some games with Josh Downs at least. I think Josh Downs is a must start this week. I do. And yeah, that will do it for this edition of Foolish Fantasy. I hope you have a best of luck of week 6. I'm still curious to see if you do that method of the draft strategy with if you draft a quarterback, do you also draft his wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 to hopefully you can get piggyback some points because that's what I do. But I'll do it here. I've been Kramer Sansone, and make sure you follow along for all the extra content that we bring to you here at Foolish Club Media. Or if it's all that stuff that's all the way down in Houston or the stuff here in Kansas City. We appreciate you following along and enjoying the journey that we are creating for you all. You have a great rest of your day, and good luck for week 6 of fantasy football.